Calls for a ceasefire in Gaza are growing as the Hamas-controlled Health Ministry last night confirmed that more than 9,700 Palestinians have been killed, with over 4,000 of them reported to be children.
But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said there will be no ceasefire until the hostages are returned. Joining us now is Alon-Lee from the co-director of the Jewish Arab Peace Coalition, Standing Together. Alon, welcome to you. We understand communication has now been cut off again in Gaza. Have you heard from any of your colleagues there?
No, it's quite challenging to hear from peace activists in Gaza. I'm sure they're dealing also with the blackouts and the attacks of the Israeli Air Force, but also with the very challenging reality under the dictatorship of Hamas.
And Alon, we spoke to one of your colleagues, Sali Abed, last week, who said that there's a feeling within Israel at the moment, I think she's in Tel Aviv as well, that the people there, the citizens of Israel, are being sheltered often from a lot of the reality of what is going on in Gaza. How are you receiving your information, and how are you able to verify what is the truth about what's happening there?
Well, it's very important to just stick to the very basic facts. The facts are that Israel has been attacked greatly in a terrorist way by Hamas. Hamas committed a massacre, slaughtered children, women. And since then, we've been suffering a collective trauma. Really, we are afraid. But there are other facts as well. Some of the facts are that children are being bombed, families are being bombed. And it seems like a lot of the ministers in Israel are acting as if there is no sense in the strategy of Israel right now, but to maybe attack for revenge or indiscriminately attack. And what we're calling for is the understanding that on both sides there are innocent people, that on both sides people deserve to live. And we're saying that we don't feel that our government has a plan on what to do in Gaza. Okay, let's say you conquer Gaza Strip, and then what? Who's going to control it? Is Israel supposed to take control over or responsibility over the health and the education of the Palestinian people live there? We hear the calls of our ministers and parliament members from the right wing to rebuild the settlements in Gaza. Is this a plan that is going to achieve safety or security to the Israeli people? What we're saying right now is this moment is still in the status quo of maintaining the occupation, maintaining the conflict, instead of actually looking in the other direction, the direction of an Israeli-Palestinian peace, a direction that we're sure is the only way to achieve safety and security to the people in Israel, and of course also freedom to the Palestinian people.
And Alon, what about that humanitarian side? While all of this is going on, there is a tacit agreement that humanitarian aid will continue. It appears that there are real difficulties around this. What are you hearing?
So first of all, this is another fact that cannot be denied. There is a terrible humanitarian crisis in Gaza Strip. We know that even before this cycle of war, Gaza was one of the biggest prisons in the world. It's a very dense populated area. There's a shortage in fuel, in water, in food, in medical supplies. And of course, we call and support bringing all the humanitarian needs inside. And we also call to release the hostages and to come to an agreement between Israel and the ones that are holding them, the Hamas and the other organizations. It sounds as if all the other things right now should be secondary to that, because there are 240 families in Israel that are waiting for their loved ones to come back to their homes. And we are sure those people, the Israelis that are held there in Gaza Strip, are alive. They're alive at the moment. And we need to do everything we can to bring them back home safe and alive. And I think it's also a good thing to de-escalate in this moment, to bring humanitarian aid into Gaza, to bring back the hostages into Israel, and to try and think of how to get out of this situation, and not to how to escalate it even further. Yesterday, a minister in Israel suggested that we should nuke Gaza. Of course, he apologized right away, but this kind of a discourse that we hear from our leadership here in Israel is not something helpful, not at all.
No, not at all. I remember hearing that over the weekend and was quite surprised, but I think he has been since suspended. There have been increasing calls globally, Alon-Lee, for a ceasefire. How has news of those global protests, for example, this weekend in London and various cities across the UK, there were hundreds of thousands of people turned up calling for a ceasefire. Within Israel, are there similar protests happening, calls for ceasefires, or is there unanimous support for what the Israeli government are doing at the moment?
Well, first of all, it's not safe to have mass mobilizations right now in Israel. We have alarms and missiles that are being shot at us. It's not the safest to gather thousands of people than having an alarm and people are running on each other. So we need to be very responsible in what we're doing at the moment and not to risk people. And then I will say that we are seeing the demonstrations around the world, and I will say, let me say it in a very clear way. It is a good thing to support, lives of Palestinians. It's a very good thing to support, the end of the killing of innocent people in Gaza, and innocent people are being killed. You said it, that thousands of children has died there from the bombings of the Israeli Air Force, and it's not a good thing, and it's a good thing to support the ending of this. It's also a good thing to condemn Hamas and to demonstrate against Hamas that committed a massacre. And I think you need to remember a very basic fact. On both sides, there are normal people, innocent people that are living. And what we expect as people that are active on the ground is that you will not choose a side, I stand with Palestine or I stand with Israel, but stand with the people living on this land. And there's Israeli Jewish people and there are Palestinians, some of them are Israeli citizens. And we need this support right now because the leadership in Israel is not providing safety or security, but I'm also sure that the leadership of the Gazan people is not providing them the security. And it is very important to point on solutions. And the solution is an Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement. That's the only way to defeat Hamas. I know we're being promised by our government that they will have just one more war after 16 cycles of war in the last decade and a half. And that's time they will actually beat Hamas. But the only way to beat Hamas is understand that Hamas is also an idea. And this idea is being fed by extremism. And it's being fed by the extreme reality that is going on over there. So we need to go in the other direction, a direction of, easing up the lives of people, achieving freedom to all the people and equality to all the people that live on this land. And unfortunately, that's not the reality. There are millions of Palestinians living under the control of the Israeli army, but they're not an Israeli citizen. That's a very extreme reality. So we need to solve those problems in order to achieve security. And one more war will not bring us there.